Well, welcome back to another episode of WhiskZ Talks, and I am fanboying out here because I am at Starward Distillery down in Melbourne, and I've been waiting for a long time to have a chat with you and come down. Introduce yourself.
Thanks, man. My name's Matthew Follent. I'm the brand ambassador here at Starward Whisky in Port Melbourne. What that job means is, taking people around the distillery, doing tours, tastings, events, dinners, just sharing the whiskey love. That's me. I hang out here a lot. It's a lot of fun.
I was going to say, not a bad place to kind of hang out with. So, and mate, you've taken us through. There's a couple of things, obviously, we couldn't take video of. It's obviously secrets of the trade, which we understand. But so there's unfortunately probably going to be any exclusives on this video, just for anyone that's trying to look for it. But what I love about this kind of video content, or what I do, is trying to find out your journey, not even just about the brand and everything like that, but finding out your journey into whiskey. So how did it all start for you? Was it whiskey always a thing, or was it like a lot of other people where it was brewing into beer or things like that?
Me, getting into whiskey was pretty much just at a consumer level. I grew up in country New South Wales. My dad drank Johnny Walker. I used to steal Johnny Walker out of the cabinet, sort of thing, and you have a bad night on it, and then you forget about whiskey for a couple of years. It wasn't until I actually got into hospitality, so probably about 10 years ago, 18, 19, I'd say, I started working in bars. Whiskey was obviously, everyone drinks it, and I started getting into it then. Over the course of working in bars, obviously wanted to make a career out of it, and I moved from working in nightclubs as a glassy all the way to bartender, to working in cocktail bars, to working in a cocktail bar that had a whiskey focus. I was a bar manager there with a good friend of mine, who's an Irish lad who loves whiskey, so we took that whiskey holding from about 100 bottles all the way up to about 600 bottles.
Wow.
And then through that process, got pretty deep into what whiskey is, the different flavors, different styles, etc. And having to write a whiskey menu and all the tasting notes and backstories on distilleries, you get a pretty good understanding and a love and a passion for it. That grew into a bit of whiskey collecting as well, and then actually got into a bit of whiskey education or spirit education. Worked with Diageo for a couple of years as a contract trainer for them, and then that was my jam. I loved teaching people. I love educating people in different spirits and styles, whether whiskey or gin or whatever. But I always, wanted to go further into whiskey. I had my ear on Starward for a long time. Actually, when I was working in that whiskey bar, 1806 cocktail whiskey bar in the CBD of Melbourne, we went out to Essendon Fields Airport in 2014, I think, with Paul Slater, and we hung out there and saw what they were doing. Really small setup. They just released the Solera or the Apera cask, and we got to taste some of the wine cask that was maturing as well, so it was pretty awesome. But since then I've always had an eye on them, and over the course of the last couple of years wanted to eventually work here and put a few things in place, and I've ended up here.
Well, it's a pretty good place to be able to come and work for. So you mentioned that obviously you worked in bars, and the natural progression was from glassy to working the bars and serving and then tasting and that. Was it the shift that you needed to get out of doing the night shift and actually, and I might say you got a 9-to-5 job, because obviously you do tastings and all that kind of stuff, but those long hours and late nights, did that end up taking a toll? Was that a bit of a push to get into a typical job, let's just say?
Yeah, well, there's nothing typical about this job.
That's why we're interviewing you, because everyone wants your job.
But a strong part of it was definitely. I love hospitality. I love when guests come in and they're really engaged and they're really passionate about what they're doing, but that's a small percentage of the market. When you're working in a bar, you have no say on who comes into your door, and whoever comes in, you look after them as much as possible. And for 12 to 15 hours a night, that does take its toll, definitely. It was a pretty big influence on me wanting to go to more of a traditional role like this. I do still do a bit of bartending and events here and there, and I love doing that once every now and then. I don't miss the 5 a.m. finishes, let's just say that.
Yeah, I've never done it, so I've never been in the hospitality trade, but obviously been around at many nightclubs and finished at 5 o'clock with them kind of thing. And there's no way I could do it on the other side of the bar.
Yeah.
So you mentioned you worked for Diageo for how long?
I contracted with them for about probably 4 years in total.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And doing the similar kind of thing as what you're doing now, or?
Not quite as focused as in like brand ambassador, but did a lot of whiskey education and stuff like that. I was more of a spirits trainer and educator for them. I actually work for an agency called Sweet and Chili, and they look after their ambassador program and a lot of their events. And sort of, that's where I spend a lot of my time, just doing events and experiential whiskey tastings and stuff like that. Yeah.
So for anyone that doesn't know who that brand is, or who do they actually represent?
Sweet Chili or Diageo?
Diageo.
Diageo represent a large amount of brands. Biggest one, probably Johnny Walker, 26 distilleries that go into that.
Is it that big, 26?
Yeah, don't quote me on that, but it'd be 24 to 26. I'm not sure they might move around the last couple of years, but when I was working as 26, they're Cardus, Lagavulin, Kalila, Talisker,
Dalwhinnie, isn't it?
Yeah, Dalwhinnie. We've got
So they've just released a 30-year-old Dalwhinnie, or about to be, and then the Talisker, the new ones being the. Did you see the little packs that some people got sent out?
Yeah.
Did you get one?
I didn't. No.
Got to get back onto those contacts again, mate.
I obviously don't spend enough money on whiskey these days.
So when did you start at Starward? What year was that?
I literally started 54 weeks ago now.
Oh, right. Okay, cool.
So it started just a year ago, straight into COVID.
COVID?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how did that change the... how did that change kind of the probably the job description of what you thought you had compared to what you were doing once it actually started for it?
Oh, I did anything and everything around the business. I started off just doing virtual tastings like everyone did. So 500 little tasting kits I sent out to bartenders and some guests that got access to the link somehow.
I think that's how I first met you, because I saw it and I'm thinking, hang on a second, how do I get one of these? And I wasn't in the industry at that, so still upset about it, but all right, we're here now.
It was so little tastings of twofold Nova and Solera, little 50ml samples, and then a little virtual link that went onto that. So I think I ended up doing like 50 of those.
Wow.
So every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday night at 6 p.m. and 7:30 p.m. I'll be at home on the laptop just doing a little tasting in my room. So that kept me busy. Obviously packing all of those kits, shipping them out, all the rest. It's a bit of a logistical nightmare, but we got it done thanks to Australia Post. So that was probably the first couple of months, and then I did spend a lot of time in production, so bottling line, packaging, which is good. I got to, I wanted to do that anyway, see all sides of the business, have some actual credibility behind me, right, of knowing what happens day to day, and getting a complete understanding of the business as a whole. And then, as things started to open slowly, focusing on my real job, which is what I'm in full swing now.
It's funny because obviously we've done a lot of interviews with the smaller distilleries and obviously it's like a 3-man band with a lot of these kind of places, and you've got 40, 50 people kind of working here, and obviously everyone's got kind of their own jobs that they do, but to be able to be involved in everything, it kind of shows the quality of the brand and like yourself wanting to make sure that you're not just a person faking it, going, oh, this is the tasting notes or this is how things are done, but you haven't actually done anything yourself. And I've spoken to a fair few people on the bigger scale of places, and they literally only do one job, and you ask them how do you do the bottling, and they go, oh, we don't know, I'll get a bottling person on it. So it's kind of nice to know that you've got a grip over everything. Obviously you're not going to be an expert on everything, but at least you've got a grip on everything from it. So
100%.
So when you started here, it was at this location currently. So we're in Port Melbourne now, and it started in Essendon beforehand. And so when was it? Because there's a certain label on a bottle that obviously has a different date on when it all started. But what was the official date that Starward kicked off?
So the official date the year that Starward was founded as a brand is 2007. That's when Dave Fatale wrote down on paper, I'm going to start a whiskey business. We didn't actually we didn't get the keys to our distillery in Essendon Fields Airport in Old Qantas hangar up there until 2009. So in terms of the site, it was established in 2009, and then we started distilling in January 2010. So we were in Essendon Fields from 2010 to 2016 to when we came here to Port Melbourne. So that bottle, is referring to this distillery. Maybe
when this one's that's right, yeah. So it's been here it's 2016 from here, and you can't see it here, but we've got a window here where the stills used to be, and you've just gone through a massive renovation to lift them up and have all of this work done.
Yep.
And that was during the COVID period, which is probably not bad because you couldn't have people here anyway.
Yep.
What was the major work that you did here during that COVID period?
Yes.
And the question is, why?
Yeah. Well, production capacity was a big thing for us. We're expanding globally. We're in the US, we're into lots of countries in Europe, and to keep up with that, we need to make more whiskey. We'll run it at 24/7 for the 12 to 18 months prior to when we shut down for this upgrade. We doubled our capacity with the new upgrade, but just as important, we made a lot of efficiencies.
Yeah.
Essentially, we reduced our water and energy consumption to about 30 to 40% per kiloliter of alcohol, which is pretty great. More of a closed loop system here in terms of production, and a lot of automation, so a lot less running around and measuring things and taking measurements here, there and everywhere. It's all on a computer screen, and 2 or 3 guys can run the whole fermentation and distillation facility. In terms of infrastructure, there's a new mezzanine floor, so the stills are up off the floor. A lot of fixed pipe work and innovation underneath that keeps everything moving quite quickly. We've got a mezzanine floor that has a new 7,000 litre wash still, so that's from Frilly, copper pot still, an Italian steel maker. And then, hot liquor tank, a new cooling tower to help reduce the amount of water we use as well. A lot of small little bits of innovation here, there and everywhere that make everything tick along nicely.
Well, it's definitely one of the biggest productions I've seen at any distillery before, and obviously you are one of the biggest brands in production-wise in Australia anyway. So you mentioned, we were talking off before, that you're a Melbourneian now, but you were from whereabouts again?
Dubbo.
Okay. And did you get in the alcohol industry or the hospitality industry in Dubbo, was it?
No, so I left Dubbo 2011 and moved down here. I was actually in Geelong, just about 40 minutes away, for the first couple of years, studying at uni and just working in a bar.
Okay.
And then dropped out of uni and kept going in hospitality. Yeah, sort of found my passion, and that's what I went for. Yeah.
So then, if you weren't really, it's been about 10 years in the hospitality industry. So was it over those 10 years working in bars, you kind of started learning how to, nose and the palate and all that kind of stuff? Was there a teacher that you had? Did you go to a program? So if someone was, wanting to be in your position, how do they do it? Obviously, they have to drink a lot of whiskey and nose a lot of whiskey, and that's the greatest part of what we do. But did you do a course or anything like that?
No, it wasn't an official course. It was a lot of trainings. As bartenders, brands come to you a lot and they want to educate you, so you have the skill and the understanding to be able to sell their product in venue. So the more and more trainings that I did in my bars, the better understanding I had of what whiskey is and how it's made and why it tastes what it does. And it wasn't until I actually understood that and was able to decipher what was happening in the glass and potentially what they were doing to make it taste that way that I actually got a bigger understanding and passion for whiskey. There was once upon a time where I smelled whiskey and I was like, I don't want to drink that. That's terrible. Why would I ever get into whiskey? But over that course of learning and studying and taking a lot of time personally to learn and read and understand, I grew my passion for it, and here we are. Don't worry,
I started drinking Johnny Walker cans as my first whiskey experience, and I think that's only stopped in the last couple of years. So I still love a sneaky one, but I've only the last probably 18 months to 2 years where I've really started to appreciate it. So I'm still very young in that and trying to learn as much as I can with it all. And it's just kind of nice to know that it is just about trying as many different whiskies, and there's no course or a magic pill, as we call them in our industry, for what we do. Just to be able to know everything about them, kind of thing. And I'm doing a lot of research. I'm sitting there, I'm talking to people like yourself, going on as many tours as I can to learn all the backstory and how people do certain things, because everyone does it completely different, you know. And obviously you're automated, where obviously again the 3-man places can't do it, kind of this kind of production kind of thing. So we're coming back to being into this brand here. You've only been here for about 54 weeks. Yeah. Okay, cool. And I've seen you on Instagram with your midnight tastings to people in the UK or Germany and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
What's been kind of the most memorable part of being here on like your whiskey journey in Starward itself?
In Starward?
Yeah.
It'd probably be before this year, like when I went to the distillery in Essendon Field. That was the start of my Starward journey, you could say. That's probably the most exciting part, where I was like, wow, Australia's making whiskey, it's delicious, and this is gonna make some noise eventually. So the fact that deep down, I was like, I want to work for them one day, and after working with, amazing international brands, I was really excited about coming to work for a local Australian distillery. And I was like, I can represent them proudly, and people will, I'm not that Aussie guy talking about Scotch whiskey, you know what I mean? I feel like I had to put on a Scottish accent to take
the door on,
exactly.
So
the fact that I could just, be myself, represent an amazing, exciting brand, that's probably the biggest thing.
There's only one way to really say it, but Starward makes some good shit.
Yeah.
It really does. I discovered Starward probably about 4 years ago at my local bar. The bar owner said, Zach, you've got to try this. He knew I was a little bit into whiskey. And my partner, who really, she enjoys whiskey, not as much as what I do and the way I like it. She loves old fashions, but we would literally buy a wine cask, so the black label with the little gold writing all over it, from Dan Murphy's back in the day. And I remember the amount of holidays that we'd been on, and the only bottle of whiskey we would bring was a Starward wine. Right. So it's like a little bit of a journey between my partner and I, and that's why I've become a bit of a fanboy with it, because it's not just because it's great whiskey. There's an actual story behind it for me, why I enjoy it, and it's some of the best memories we've had before we had a child and can't drink as much whiskey anymore. So it's been interesting. So apart from then the most enjoyable thing you've had here, what's the most enjoyable part of whiskey journey or whiskey events that you've had before?
Probably I've done a few trips to Scotland, and gone to some amazing distilleries over there. Spent a week on Islay, which is just like magical. Like you stepping back in time when you land on Islay. It's amazing whiskey, amazing people. Like if you're not making whiskey on Islay, you're a farmer. If you're not a farmer, you're a fisherman. And so like the food and the hospitality is just it's exceptional. So that's probably like a highlight of whiskey internationally outside of Starward, obviously. Being able to go to essentially the home of whiskey, as people know it, right? It was pretty memorable, and I'm hopefully going back one day, but we'll see.
It's the big thing, isn't it? Once those borders start opening up, a lot of the guys are going to get straight over there.
Exactly.
So, I don't know if you're allowed to say it, but do you have a favourite baby from here?
Yeah, I definitely do. In terms overall skew, it has to be twofold.
Yep.
Not, some people might not like liquid as it is, but for me, I love twofold because of what it's done for the Australian whiskey industry. People can now drink an Australian whiskey highball for $10 in a bar. We've given people the option to enter the Australian whiskey category without spending a couple of $100 on a bottle, which for that reason, I have to say twofold. I love the liquid. Like it's easy, it's approachable, it's accessible. It has 60% wheat in there, so it is light, refreshing. Heaps of vanilla in there. Great for cocktails, super versatile. So for me, as an ambassador and a bartender, essentially, it makes my job pretty easy to have that and be able to walk into bars and initially people are like, oh, Australian whiskey, that's super expensive, right? I'm like, well, no, you can
get an entry level. Yeah. I think on my tour, like I've only done a couple of reviews. I'm waiting to do get a couple more bottles because I want to do a full month, like one Starward review a day. I think I've probably got enough now with what I've got. But the twofold for me is the best bang for buck, as in like for an Australian whiskey in the entry level kind of thing. The Nova I love, and it packs a lot of fruity punches and stuff like that. It has a lot of flavour onto it. But if you can get that the twofold at like $50 to $55, which a lot of times is on special, it's just a crazy buy, and it's really great to have that entry level into it. I've only found probably one other Australian whiskey that's cheaper, And I'm not too sure if you saw that review. That was Bond the 7, and oh my god, do not buy that bottle at all. It's basically Johnny Walker Red, basically.
I haven't had it, but
$32.
Yeah,
I think I was, and it's a 37%er. So I should have brought a sample now for you. But no, the twofold is that perfect entry level to be able to do it. And I haven't had it in a highball yet, but I've had it in other cocktails as well.
Yeah.
And Millie from the Gresham is a
really
major fan of a couple of different brands that I really follow, Pure Scott and Starward, and she really pushes that out, your brand as well up there, which is really cool to
yeah, she was in a couple of weeks ago. She came down.
Yes, also about it. Yeah,
it's a good time.
Yeah. So you were talking about how you've now started to push into that America area and obviously the UK, things like that in Germany. So at the moment, the America is getting the twofold and the Nova, is it? Pretty much.
And Solera.
Okay, cool. And then they're getting some, you'll be able to see in the back here, you've got some single cast releases in there, per kind of thing. I have tried to import them back from America. They're nearly impossible to do. But the UK has something that is going to be a consistent bottle release that we don't get here.
Yeah.
Okay. There's people saying that it's twofold.
It's not.
Can you talk about that a little bit? So it's called left field.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
So what's the difference between twofold and what's the difference between left field?
So left field is a UK and EU exclusive. It is replacing twofold in that market. Twofold won't be sold over there anymore. It's going to be kept focused on Australia and America. But we've replaced the twofold with left field. Completely different products. Yep. It is not. There's no grain in it. It is a single malt. It's a 3-year-old single malt ex-red wine, exclusively matured in French oak.
Yeah.
So 100% French oak ex-red wine, 3-year-old. So that's it compared to twofold is malt and grain, French and American oak, whereas left field is 100% single malt. Yeah.
There was a lot of people that try to fight me on that. I'm like, I'm pretty sure it's different. The labels literally have two different things on it. So I was able to get 2 bottles over. And if you were looking at trying to import a couple of bottles, they're actually they're pretty cheap to bring over. I think it cost me about $80 a bottle to get over here. So not terrible at all. To try something a little bit different, I need to pop open and try it. So you were doing a lot of tastings and virtual events on that one, I saw, and that's where I went, oh, hang on a second, I actually saw you at the bar.
Called me out.
I called you out with this little kind of thing, so I'm a bit of a hawk when it comes to this kind of stuff. So outside of the Starward brand, what is it you will generally pick up when you go to a bar or something you're sitting at home at the moment that you're really enjoying drinking?
Wow, what am I enjoying drinking? Hard one. I love trying weird and wacky things.
Yep.
Different things that. There's some great whiskey bars in Melbourne, which I'm sure you and your viewers have seen before. Elysian and Whiskey and Almond, great whiskey bars, and they do have a lot of just like independent bottles and like limited release stuff. So most of the time when I go out and drink there, if I'm not drinking Starward, I'm like, hey, what's something weird and wacky that I've never tried before? And that's just further educating myself and my palate, and understanding what new old whiskies are popping up everywhere, and they're doing weird, different things, focusing on terroir, focusing on different grains, barrels, etc. So it's ever evolving category, and you've got to keep up. You know what I mean? So
there's so much whiskey to try, isn't there? You'll never be able to try it all. But what do you normally try and go for? Do you normally go for that peated whiskey, or do you normally go for something like a red wine cask, French oak, or again, it's just anything that you kind of takes your fancy at the time?
It chops and changes. Definitely, I believe there's a whiskey out there for every time of day, every occasion. That's the beauty of the whiskey category, right? It's so diverse in flavour that there's a whiskey out there for everyone's palate and any time of day or occasion. So it does. I wouldn't say there's a favourite. I do have there's a special place in my heart for those Isla whiskies, those heavily peated ones. But just as much so, I completely understand that that's not for everyone, and sometimes it is too intense, right? It's great for the end of the night. Have a nightcap, it's awesome, but you only have one. Whereas if I want to drink a couple of highballs or a few different whiskies over the course of the night, I will. I love an ex-bourbon, like an old ex-bourbon cask. Yeah. Ooh, it's hard.
Yeah. And the best thing, we'll talk about this before, and we know this, that Melbourne has 4 seasons in a day. And you're talking about, you know, depending on what the weather is and things like that, you're going to be looking at something completely different each time.
Yeah.
You know, summer whiskies or rainy whiskey or cold whiskey or whatever you need from it. So we've got a couple of questions from the group. I'm going to open up on this as well. We'll see if you can answer a couple of these. All right, so we've got a couple of questions from people on Friends of Starward. So if you are following this and you're not on the Facebook group called Friends of Starward, jump on. We opened that a little while ago, and it's literally anything we can find out about Starward, all the rumours and stuff like that is posted there. There are Starward people that, you know, members of the industry in there. They don't say anything, unfortunately. So Essendon Airport is an interesting non-traditional option. How did that come about?
We needed the space.
Yep.
Yeah, we needed enough room to set up a little distillery and also enough room to have barrels.
Okay.
Yeah. Well before my time.
Yep.
But yeah, that was it.
So you don't do your production. One of the ones is, did you spend much time in Scotland or other countries to understand their processes? Obviously, you've been to a few distilleries and stuff like that. But let's talk about David Pryor. Sorry, that's different. David, did he spend much time overseas, or he was involved in brewing beer beforehand, wasn't he?
Yeah, so he was a home brewer. That was his passion. He moved to Tasmania in 2004, and he wanted to start his own beverage. He was focusing on beer, but he wanted to create something that he could export to the rest of the world, and he was going to look at starting an organic microbrewery. But you know, a couple of weeks in a can and an organic micro beer, it's out the window, right? In terms of quality, it starts to falter, so you can't really export that. So he shelved that idea, and a friend was like, "Hey, you should come down to the Lark Distillery in Hobart." Bill's obviously a great guy, has a lot of knowledge. Come down and check it out. So went down there, fell in love with everything they were doing. You know, the romance of the barrels, beautiful copper stills, etc. As you and I both know, and ended up working there for 3 years, learning all things about whiskey, Australian whiskey. You know, Lark makes delicious, amazing whiskeys. I'm sure you know.
Yep.
So learned from the best in terms of Australian whiskey production, and then with their blessing, moved back to Melbourne in 2007 to open Starward. Yeah. There
we go. Before starting Starward, what were the preferences for drinking, or what were your preferences for drinking whiskey? We've already touched base on that, really. Yeah. So, what is the view of your best whiskey from Starward? Again, you've already kind of
overall it'd be twofold in terms of the malts. I love Fortis. Yeah. Okay. Fortis Batch 2. I think it's just the perfect balance between our spirit profile, that tropical fruit note forward spirit, with the wine influence and the oak, an American oak. It's just, works in harmony. It's 50%, it doesn't back down.
Fortis is your new standard release, isn't it? So it's only been out, 6 months or something like that?
Yeah, October, Batch 1 came out.
Yep.
Batch 2's been out for a while. Batch 3's gone to bottle, which should be out soon. Yeah, we'll do 4 batches a year of that. Okay. So limited core release. There is a finite amount of batches, but we should keep up.
We have not seen Batch 2 in Brisbane yet.
Should be in Dan Murphy's, maybe.
I have not seen it. Otherwise, I would have grabbed some bottles. So that's interesting.
It's around.
There we go. Are Starward working on maturing bottles 10 to 15, or are they keeping it that 3 to 5 years? Are you allowed to say?
I get asked that a lot. Look, it comes down to a few things. Our climate that we mature our whiskey in, the barrels that we choose to mature our spirit in, and then our spirit profile itself. Climate's the biggest thing. Very reactive climate here. Temperature variances daily and seasonally means our casks are constantly expanding, contracting. We're getting an interaction of spirit and oak. The barrels we use, ideally they're about 5 to 6 years old, coming from the wine industry. The staves are, if you compare it to a bourbon barrel, ex-bourbon barrel, that ex-bourbon's had American bourbon in it for 5 to 6 years, let's say, higher ABV spirit compared to a wine, right? 4 to 5 times the amount of alcohol in there, so it's very extractive, pulling a lot of flavour out of that oak, whereas the wine, it's not pulling as much out because it is such a lower ABV. So the casks are almost semi-virgin, right?
Yeah.
There's still a lot of flavour, a lot of character in that oak, And then combined with our filling process, we fill a lot of casks wet so that we haven't treated them at a cooper with shaved, toast and retard. They're coming straight from the winery, so they're getting a lot of that bold wine flavour coming through as well. And then our spirit profile, light, bright and fruity. All of those things combined, it takes about 3 to 4 years for our spirit to mature. We're not cutting corners. We just embrace what we've got here as a climate, a microclimate of Melbourne. And when that spirit profile and the oak influence are in harmony and in balance, that's when we pull it out.
Yeah.
Okay. If we're going to use fifth fill barrels, it will probably take longer.
Yeah.
But we're not. We're getting these first fill ex-red wine barrels. We use a small portion of second fill, a little bit, but not as much. But that's why we'll focus on that. We have older barrels out the back.
Yeah, I was going to say, you've got to have something that's sitting out the back, yep.
We can go and taste them later. The main reason we have them is to show people why we don't.
Yeah, okay, go.
Because you taste it and you're like, it tastes like oak.
Yeah.
Very extractive, strips any moisture from your palate. Really, our ABV goes up, so we barrel at 55%. By 3 years, it's like 57, 58%. There's barrels out there like 8, 9 year olds and they're high 60s.
Wow.
Just so overpowered by the oak. It just tastes like you're licking wood chips.
Nothing you enjoy, is it? Sitting there and you're all you're tasting is oak.
Exactly.
Wood and
There's no beauty in that. There's no art in that.
So you've recently just done 2 new releases. One was a cherry wood and the other one was the Mystique thing. Are you going to be doing any more cherry wood seeing they're sold out in an hour?
No, that was a one-off. We actually did that in Essendon Field about 6 years ago. We worked with a malter out of the States, Bruce Maltings, and we got them to do a cherry wood and a mesquite smoked malt. And then we distilled that and filled those into 50 litre ex-Apera. Matured for 5.5 years, I think, about that. And there is no more. Yeah.
Right, there you go. This is probably one that a lot of people have probably asked me the most is, how the hell did the Starward name come across?
Yeah, so good question. Get asked this a lot. I keep forgetting to tell people about this in my normal spiel. Dave wanted to stay away he wanted to be a new world whiskey, right? So he wanted to stay away from the old world styles of naming a distillery after a place, a person, or an animal. Starward sort of speaks to our mentality of always looking up and always looking forward, progressing, being new worlds, pushing the boundaries, doing things different. The star part of it, you could dive a bit deeper in there, depends who you talk to. Dave sort of was focusing on, they wanted to focus on the fire and energy that you needed to make whiskey, right? Heat your stills, malt your barley, etc. A star is the fire of the universe, so that's what they started thinking, a bit more celestial. And then, Starward, looking up, looking forward, that sort of the name.
There you go. Well, the next one was, what is a new world distillery compared to an old world distillery? You kind of answered that in a way.
Well, it's
a little bit more involved in that as well.
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's a very relevant question. There are a lot of new world distilleries out there. We're not tied by heritage and tradition. That's probably our biggest thing. We've only been making whiskey or releasing whiskey for under 10 years now. That's Apera cask came out in 2013. We can still continue to grow and do things different. We're still shaping style. Australian whiskey as a category is still defining itself.
So young still.
Yeah, so young. Compare that to Scotland and amazing distilleries over there. If you've been making, if Lagavulin been making whiskey for 200 to 300 years one way, they're not all of a sudden going to change that, right? So for a new world whiskey distillery, the main thing is location, obviously, outside of those traditional whiskey making areas, Scotland, Ireland, Japan, America, but then not bound by heritage or tradition. So we're young, excited, do things differently, embrace innovation, but we respect and we take a lot out of the old world in terms of production, but there are newer, different ways of producing whiskey, and especially in Australia, our laws are pretty loose in terms of production and what you can age it in, and compared to Scotland, let's say. So we have a lot of creative freedom to experiment and do things different, like a ginger beer cask or all the weird
cognac cask.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is what we just had before. Finally got the elusive cognac cask, which is amazing. So last question before we finish up: if you were able to get any cask yourself and they gave you the opportunity to fill it here, what kind of cask would you be choosing?
It would be an American oak cask. Not sure. Actually, I don't know. Good question. I haven't had this question. I wouldn't mind like a really old, seasoned sherry cask, like a good quality sherry cask. That's been used in the industry for 50 years before we got it. Very hard to come by these days. Both here in Australia and in Europe. But I'd be really interested to see what our spirit would look like in that. Otherwise, couldn't get that, which we'll never get because there's so little of them about. Probably an ex-American oak cask, maybe. Like I do love the bourbon, ex-bourbon casks. I think that flavour really tied in well with that spirit character. So I'd love to see a bit more of that potentially. Hard question.
Yeah. So we've had people like John Jarvis from Hobart Whisky use a tequila cask.
Oh yeah, that'd be cool.
Mark from Overeem is rum cask, so he would like to put a rum cask in his collection with what he does. I've had other people like you've just recently had the Lark Ginotto cask, which was amazing.
I've tasted it.
Oh, it's such a beautiful dessert whiskey. It's just that syrupy, thick, just beautiful on there. A little bit sweet, which was great. But the tequila cask keeps coming up over and over and over again by a lot of people. So, you've got the champagne cask that people talking about and that kind of stuff. So, it's one of those things because I think that really shows kind of like how creative people can be with it. But then some people just like the basic stuff because that's what they really love.
Yeah.
But your spirit will be completely different, say, from what someone's producing in Tasmania or Canberra or whatever it is. So your spirit will be better even if it was red wine cask all the way around, they're all going to taste completely different. So it's just an interesting question to do that. So
the tequila would definitely be overpowering, I think, for our spirit. Like it'd be rich. I'm not sure it'd work. Yeah. I'd like to see a tequila cask. That'd be cool.
That'd be interesting.
I love tequila.
Mate, well, thank you for joining us on this thing and finally teeing up a time to come down. Obviously, COVID has restricted me from getting out of Melbourne. It's been nearly 2 years for me, which is insane because I'm normally down here 3 or 4 times a year. Thank you for spending the time with us today. It's been awesome to see the production and taste the cognac cask, which has been the elusive one that I have not been able to get before. So, mate, I've really enjoyed it. As I said, I've been a massive fanboy of what Starward's been doing. So I can't believe it's taken me this long to get down here, but it's been enjoyable. Thank you so much. Cool. So guys, tune in for the next interview. I don't actually know who we're going to be getting, but I'm down in Melbourne at the moment and we do have a few extra people we're going to be speaking with. So if you have any questions or if you have anyone that you would love me to interview and find out their journey into whiskey, make sure you leave a comment down below and if it's on Facebook, tag them in. I'll see you next time.